The transfer market is always fascinating in the sense that just a faint rumor can shake the entire scene. The story of Julian Alvarez and Barcelona is the clearest example. At first, only a few Argentine newspapers quietly mentioned that Barcelona were looking for Lewandowski's successor. And Alvarez was one of the names on their list. Soon after, the Spanish press quickly picked up the story, even citing statements from Laporta, saying the idea was to bring Alvarez in once Lewandowski departs. Then came the staggering figures. Talk of Barca being ready to spend €200 million. While Alvarez's contract at Atletico de Madrid reportedly includes a release clause of up to €500 million. It may sound hard to believe, but that only makes people even more curious. What's more, Hugo Raffin-Varas, Alvarez's former coach, added extra drama by revealing that his pupil had always been a Barcelona fan since childhood and never felt truly comfortable with Simeone's disciplined defensive style. This revelation spread quickly, making many believe that emotional ties could be the leverage for Barca to convince Alvarez. Some newspapers even claimed that Barcelona would take advantage of Messi's image, Alvarez's childhood idol, to gain a psychological edge. Meanwhile, the English press jumped in, dragging both Liverpool and Arsenal into the mix. But clearly, the name Camp Nou remained at the center of all the speculation. On the Atletico Madrid side, the response was firm. President Chero insisted that Alvarez was not for sale, while Simeone declared he was completely confident about his player's future. Alvarez himself also had to speak up, calmly stating, "People always talk, but I just focus on playing football. Everything on social media is beyond my control." A remark that seemed to silence the rumors, but in fact only made the story feel even more unresolved. Rumors are still rumors, but when they get repeated over and over again, it's clear that the connection between Barcelona and Alvarez is no longer just pure fabrication. It reflects Barca's thirst for a successor to Lewandowski, and with Alvarez, 25 years old, a World Cup winner, and scoring consistently for Atletico, he is exactly the type of player the coolers dream of bringing in. Today it may only be a whisper, but in football, no one can be certain that tomorrow it won't turn into a blockbuster transfer. Looking across Europe right now, if money truly has to be spent, there is no one more fitting than Julian Alvarez. Because when all the potential candidates are put on the scales, those who appear perfect at first quickly reveal their flaws. Take Erling Haaland, for example. He is still the most terrifying goal machine in the world right now. But prying him away from Manchester City is almost unthinkable. City have just extended his contract and consider Haaland the central gem of a long-term project. Not to mention, his release clause and wages are far beyond what Barcelona can afford. A club still under financial pressure from recent years of crisis cannot afford to gamble on such a deal, unless they want to repeat the same old mistakes. Sergio Guirassy, however, is a different story. He has been scoring consistently in the Bundesliga, and his transfer fee is reasonable. Only around €40 minus 50 million. But to take the number one striker seat at Barcelona, as Lewandowski's direct successor, Guirassy is unlikely to measure up. He lacks international pedigree and is not the type of forward who can carry a giant club both in terms of media presence and expectations. For a club like Barcelona, the striker is not just someone who scores goals, but also a symbol. Someone who attracts fans and inspires the young supporting cast around him. Guirassy may be good, but he doesn't yet have the weight to be the name hung at Camp Nou. Meanwhile, Julian Alvarez is at the perfect stage of his career. At just 25 years old, he still has a long road ahead. He already has the 2022 World Cup with Argentina, has experienced the Premier League with Manchester City, and has proven himself in La Liga with Atletico Madrid. More importantly, Alvarez is not just a goalscorer, he is a forward who covers wide areas, presses relentlessly, drops deep to link play, and combines smoothly with the supporting cast around him. That is exactly the profile of a modern number 9, the kind of striker who makes the whole system run more fluidly, rather than simply waiting for goals. For Barcelona, where players like Yamal, Ferran Torres, or Olmo all need a focal point who can connect the team, Alvarez is almost the ideal piece. In terms of value, it's true his release clause at Atletico could be as high as €500 million. But in reality, no deal ever happens at that figure. Barcelona have shown many times they know how to negotiate to bring the price down. especially when the player is open to leaving. Compared to Haaland, Alvarez is a far more realistic target, and Barca can persuade him with both emotional ties and playing opportunities. Don't forget, it was Laporta himself who openly admitted the idea of bringing Alvarez in once Lewandowski departs. When the president of Barcelona says it outright, it's clear Alvarez is part of the plan, not just a rumor. Beyond that, Alvarez also possesses something Barcelona desperately need: brand appeal. He is a World Cup champion, Messi's teammate in the triumph at Qatar, and a face representing a new generation of Argentina. At a time when Barcelona are striving to regain their global stature after the Messi era, having a striker who is both world-class and internationally marketable like Alvarez would be a massive boost. Not as unrealistic as Haaland, not as underwhelming as Guirassy, Alvarez is the perfect blend of feasibility and stature. In short, when placed in the broader European football landscape, Barcelona have to admit there is no better choice than Alvarez. He is young enough to commit long-term, good enough to carry responsibility, experienced enough not to be overwhelmed, and star-powered enough to become the new symbol. For now, it's still just speculation, but if the time comes to truly spend, Alvarez is the most reasonable name for Barcelona to entrust with the post-Lewandowski era. Signing Julian Alvarez would be Laporta's strategic card in the Barcelona presidential race. At Barcelona, the presidency has never been just about administration. It is a blend of politics, economics, football, and media. Laporta knows this better than anyone, having once won an election by promising to bring Ronaldinho, and later securing re-election with the project of Messi's return. Now, with Lewandowski past his peak, the club struggling with debt, and political rivals waiting for the right moment to attack, Laporta needs a card strong enough to tilt the electoral balance, and that card is Julian Alvarez. For Laporta, promising to bring Alvarez is not just about signing a striker, it is a declaration: I have the power to create a shock. If the transfer were to succeed, it would not be an ordinary deal. It would carry the weight of a new Figo moment, a move that shakes the whole of European football. Remember, Figo's move to Real Madrid was not merely about sport, but also a political strike, one that enraged Camp Nou and reshaped La Liga's power dynamics. If Barcelona now managed to snatch Atletico's biggest star at the height of his form, it would be the opposite statement: Barcelona still have the power to change the game, with Laporta at the helm. Of course, the obstacles are enormous. Alvarez's release clause stands at €500 million. Atletico would never willingly sell, and Barcelona are still struggling with wage bills and FFP regulations. But in the logic of an election, Laporta doesn't need to make it happen immediately. He only needs to plant a dream in the minds of the socios and prove that only he can turn it into reality. That is why Alvarez becomes the trump card, more feasible than Haaland, and far more appealing than cheaper yet underwhelming options like Guirassy. If Laporta makes Alvarez the centerpiece of his campaign, he will have a story to sell to the socios. A new Barcelona era, with a striker of a new generation, one who lifted the World Cup alongside Messi and who can join forces with Yamal to open a fresh chapter. That kind of message not only excites members but also leaves political opponents scrambling, unable to produce a stronger card. And if it truly succeeds, this deal would go down in history. It would not merely replace Lewandowski, but stand as a milestone proving that Barcelona can still create global shockwaves despite financial hardship. A transfer with political, media, and sporting significance, all embodied in one name: Alvarez. For years, Barcelona have lacked just one piece to become an unstoppable team. They have Cubarsí rising as the new defensive leader, Balda exploding on the left, the brains of De Jong and Pedri controlling midfield, and Yamal emerging as the torchbearer of a new generation. Rashford brings speed and directness. Rafinha adds unpredictability, while Koundé, Araujo, and Christensen lock down the backline. Yet, despite all these talents, Barcelona have still lacked a truly modern striker to connect it all together. That is exactly why Alvarez is the solution. He is not just Lewandowski's replacement, he is the man to lead Barcelona's attack into a new era. With his relentless pressing, intelligent movement, and sharp finishing, Alvarez makes the entire system flow. Yamal would have more space to display his technique. Rashford would find a perfect partner on the counter. And Pedri and De Jong would have a reliable target for every pass. Alvarez is both spearhead and link, The very model of the modern number 9, scoring goals, creating play, and applying pressure. Without a striker of such stature, Barcelona remain a promising team, dangerous in moments, but inconsistent in dominance. With Alvarez, the scattered pieces instantly become a complete unit. Joan Garcia guards the goal. Cubarsí and Araujo secure the fortress. De Jong and Pedri orchestrate the midfield. Yamal and Rashford stretch the wings. Rafinha provides creative rhythm, and Alvarez is the decisive spearhead. A squad that is young yet experienced, rooted in La Masia yet global in stature. With Julian Alvarez, the Barcelona Dream Team 2026 is no longer a vague idea. It is a concrete project, a team capable of challenging anyone. A reminder that Barcelona still have the power to redefine their own golden era.